Glitches.
Yes, folks, it's Thursday. It's 2 p.m. I'm Fred McMurray, which means this must be
Pillars of franchising. Pillars of franchising.
All right, folks, man, that was a rockin' intro. Thanks to our friends at Markel's Audio Lab for the great Pillars of Franchising theme song that once you hear it, you will never, ever, ever, ever forget it again. We love it. Yeah, let's rock this sucker. So I'm with my co-host Ray and Kristin. As usual, we're going to bring you an hour of weirdness, hopefully, and fun. Ray? It's snowing where you are. Kristin, it's not, although you have a razorback on your head. So, what's up, folks?
Well, as far as the weather here, it is actually a glorious 50 degrees. So it's not snowing, but I figure maybe the background get everybody kind of ready for what's coming in the Chicagoland area. So I'm here in Aurora, Illinois. Like I say, 50 degrees, sunny, beautiful day outside. It's absolutely gorgeous outside. And how about you, Kristin?
Well, I'm just up the street, but it looks like we're worlds away.
Yeah.
I have like this weird thing going on today. I'd rather be at the beach, but I am also here in Illinois. And I'm wearing my hat in honor of Tom, who Ray is going to announce and talk about.
Whoa, we got to get her more.
That my brother gave me when he was down there going to school.
Okay. We got to get her more bandwidth, don't we, Ray?
Yes, we do. We missed a good part of that sentence.
I think it had to do with her brother going down to Arkansas for
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we got to get you off Wi-Fi and into
it's
a
the
hard
hat.
I just like well, for those, I can't speak on the hat we'll see on Thanksgiving, but my belief is the hat on Thanksgiving and this hat will be in the top 10 hats of 2020 on the Pillars of Franchising. I got to tell you, it's been people give Californians crap about it being really kind of warm, like in the 40s or 50s, and in Chicago you'd all be out in a picnic, and that's true, and it's well deserved. But the other thing that I'll say is, in Chicago, when it was in the 40s out, I would turn the heat on at night. And yet people around here don't seem to have furnaces and they don't seem to work. So even though it's been, in the 70s, high 70s, much like in my background, at night it's been getting into the 30s. And you know what? When there's no heat on, man, that's cold. But enough of that. So, Ray, do you want to take us from Pillars of Weather and take it to our guest?
Oh, sure. Well, we'd like to welcome back Tom Porterfield. He's a CPA, and I see CFE on there, but I'm not sure what that stands for. So I'm going to let Tom tell us what it is.
I know, but Tom can tell
us. Certified franchise executive, Ray.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Doesn't everyone know that?
It does get a little confusing, though, because there's also a certified fraud examiner in the accounting field. So some people think that I'm a certified fraud examiner, but I'm not. I'm just a certified franchise executive.
Wow. Yeah, we wouldn't want to get those two confused. Definitely not.
Which in some places would mean you're really boring, a certified franchise executive. But here it's positively positive to have a CFE here.
Yes, it is.
So we had our favorite lawyer on, Harold Kestenbaum, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, talking about FDDs, and as we're contemplating the schedule, we thought, you know what, we're in that last 6 weeks before 2021 started, so we wanted to bring Tom back on to talk about accounting and the trends in it for 2021. So tell
Wait a
us.
minute, wait.
Oh,
We're
sorry.
we're not done with pillars of weather yet. Tom,
Yeah,
where is that? And how's the weather?
I apologize.
How's the weather? The weather in Arkansas is awesome. I'm sitting here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, at College and Dixon Street. I'm sure that Kristen's brother never went on Dixon Street when he was here playing baseball. But anyways, yeah, beautiful weather, mid 60s, maybe low 70s today. So very nice.
Cool. So I think the biggest question on everybody's mind right now concerning accounting is the loans that have gone out. And Kristin, I know you wanted to mention this as well. So hopefully I'm not stepping on your question here. But
He is, but who cares?
that's the first thing that popped in my mind.
Nope.
Is both the PPP and the EIDL loans that have gone out to many of the businesses and franchises out there. From what I'm hearing is everybody is still totally confused. Can you, as to how these are going to be paid back and what you can claim on them and things like that? Do you have any clarity, or are you just as confused as everyone else?
Well, I'm certainly
Not that
not.
we expect you to give free advice.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. That's what the show's all about. Free advice.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm going to say I'm not an authority because I don't work for the SBA, which, is really in charge of administering, both the PPP and the EIDL program. But I do have a little insight to how things are working. And I understand right now loans are getting forgiven at a fairly rapid pace right now. I talked to my banker the other day, and he said typically 3 to 4 weeks from the time a borrower submits the application for forgiveness until it's actually forgiven. So that's really good news, because early on, there were none of the loans were getting forgiven early on when the forgiveness application was submitted. So it's good to see that the SBA is making some progress on that. And just the report I had from my banker, he said that they had not had any problems or issues with the forgiveness process thus far. So I think that's really encouraging. There's a lot of questions.
Stop procrastinating.
I would make sure you get it in pretty soon. I really would. The process really is a little bit simplified now with the 24-week covered period. Originally, it started out as 8 weeks. So most borrowers are going to get 100% of the loan forgiven just based on payroll alone. If for some reason your payroll doesn't, exceed the loan amount over that 24-week period, you'll have to pull in the other expenses that are qualified, the employee benefits and rent or mortgage payments, those type of things. But I think by and far, most borrowers should get the PPP forgiven just based on payroll cost alone. The thing that's probably not clear in most people's minds is how the PPP forgiveness is going to factor into their taxes this coming year. And yeah, I see some nods of the heads. Under the CARES Act, the PPP forgiveness is specifically excluded from being taxed. But there's a little bit of a twist on that. And, so I could just maybe, for example, if a company had, before they got a loan forgiven, let's say they had a $100,000 PPP loan, and before they got it forgiven, they had $100,000 of net income on the books. that $100,000 is going to be additional income, so their net income would increase to $200,000 in that case.
Mhm.
And then when you go to do the tax return, you would pull the $100,000 out on the tax return as being non-taxable
From the PPP loan.
from the PPP loan. So we're back down to $100,000.
Mhm.
But the problem, here's where the problem comes in. The problem is the expenses you use to qualify for that forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
are now not deductible.
Oh.
So you have $100,000 reduction in your expenses, which brings you right back to that $200,000 income, in this case, taxable income. So the way the IRS regulations work, the amount that's forgiven really is going to be taxable unless we see a change, in regulations, something specifically that addresses this between now and the end of the year. And, with the gridlock we've got, I really don't see that being something that will happen.
Well, I think if I understood you correctly, though, you actually have to make money. You have to show a profit, right?
That's true. Yeah, that is true. So someone that had a loss, if you had a loss at the end of the year, it's not going to be a big factor for you. But if you are profitable and the PPP forgiveness does create a taxable liability for you, it's kind of like I told one of our customers the other day. I said, well, because they kind of blurted out, well, I just want to apply for forgiveness. And I said, well, wait a minute, let's assume you're at a 33% tax rate. So if someone offered you $3 in exchange for $1, wouldn't you take that all day long? And, absolutely. So even with it being taxable, it's still a very good deal in creating liquidity, in putting some equity into a small business, creating liquidity. It's really a good situation for most recipients of the PPP loans.
Can we talk just briefly, because
This is
some
the
of our
coolest thing I have
listeners
ever
know
seen.
we've talked about in the past are thinking about getting into franchising. And one of the things Ray and I differ on is how we set up our businesses. And so something that you would probably, I would assume, advise people on and would directly play into this PPP loan, if I'm correct, is whether you're a C Corp or an S Corp. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I guess I haven't really thought through how the PPP forgiveness would be treated in a S corporation versus a C Corp.
Well, that's what I need to know.
So are you an S or a C?
I'm an S.
You're an S. Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's
And
Yes,
Ray,
she's
you're
an
pretty
S.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes she's a B,
Yes.
but either an
Right.
S or a B. Yeah.
Right. Or an SOB. I don't know.
So the S corporation, is kind of the scenario I just went through. It is going to create additional taxable income to the shareholders of an S corporation or partners of a partnership. The C corporation side, I'm going to be very honest with you. I have not really thought through how the PPP would be different in the case of a C Corp.
Mhm.
I don't know that it really would. But the taxes, the difference is the C Corp's going to pay the tax. Whereas in your case, Kristin, if you are profitable and you got the PPP loan forgiveness, you're going to have an additional tax bill this year.
Right. Right. Well, we don't need any more of those. That's for sure.
It's a privilege though to pay tax really in the country we live in, and if you're making money and you are creating value, because value is really created by making money, right?
Right. Yep.
Paying a little tax is not a bad thing.
Yep.
I'm
Well,
We want to
sorry.
minimize it.
It's
Yeah.
Of course, you're correct. You just don't want to pay more than what you have to.
Exactly. We want to manage it and minimize it.
Right.
It's
right.
And I won't
un-American
go-
to pay more tax than you have to. It's very American to try to wipe out your tax bill.
So I will never go into politics on the show, but I will say my girlfriend said to me when we went to buy a business, I don't think you can be a Democrat and own a business. I don't think those two things align. And every year when I go to do my taxes and every year when things change, I'm like, and that's as far as I'll go. Because there's a lot to think about when you go into business, and when you're in business, the things you vote for, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
You know, one thing that we've seen with the PPP situation coming into play, part of the CARES Act allowed for retirement plans to be set up before the end of the year that, you know, maybe you couldn't fund a 401k in 2020 because you didn't have it set up earlier, but you could go ahead and set that 401k up and make a profit sharing contribution between the end of December and the time you file your 2020 tax return, if you wanted to do a profit sharing deduction. So it's going to be money that's deductible in 2020, but you don't have to pay that until you actually file the tax return out to the extended due date in 2021, I'm sorry.
now there's also, with the pandemic, I think, is it the FFCA that we have out there for people who have to stay at home because either they have this COVID, their children have COVID, or can't go to school. Now that has me thoroughly confused, and I've already been notified that we have to go back and amend my taxes, because indeed we use the FFCA in code, right, in QuickBooks to account for it.
Yeah.
If I were an accountant this year, I would be going absolutely crazy. I mean, the yes, right, pull out the hair. The thing I had said to Ray before the show is, I want to know what is most frustrating thing is being an accountant in 2020. And that's kind of where our PPP questions came from, the EIDL, because really your particular profession is just being lambasted with change this year.
It really is. And, you know, I would say that I'm very thankful for the software developers that are out there, because it's really required a lot of changes to the softwares that we use, a lot of new things coming into play. And, you know, as far as the COVID pay is what I would say, you know, what you're referring to. The COVID pay gets you back a credit for taxes that you paid for people that were required to had COVID, care for a family member, etc., that you were required to pay up to 80 hours of compensation for. And you'll claim a credit on your 941 return and get that credit back for those taxes that you paid on those salaries and wages.
No.
No.
That's already happened for me on the third.
I will say,
Yeah, I already got it. I already
yeah,
got it.
you know, I don't know about you, Ray,
Already.
and mine have to be amended because, oops, you know, we forgot. But I think the one thing that when we talk about a regular entrepreneurial startup type business versus a franchise, the one thing I've appreciated this year about having a franchise is that as the PPP came out, as EIDL came out, as the FFCA came out, the franchisor did a very good job and effectively communicated, hey, you guys need, I mean, they can't do it for us, but as owners, they can make sure that we knew what tools were out there and how to make sure we could survive and get extra funding. And I think, again, going back to why we're in franchising, franchisors give us.
Yeah. The franchisors that were out there learning as much as they could as things developed and supporting their system definitely provided a lot of value. I know we work with some systems where several of the franchisees got the EIDL, and we haven't talked about that, but typically there's a $10,000 grant that was part of the EIDL. And then the EIDL loan, what remains as a loan, is going to be paid at a low interest rate and over a 30-year period, I think. So it's basically nothing in terms of cash, outlay going forward for many people. The one thing I would say there is, though, the EIDL, that $10,000 grant, is going to reduce the amount that you do get forgiven on the PPP. So if you got 100,000 and you also got an EIDL grant of 10, you can't get more than 100,000 forgiven.
Right. Yeah, it's I'm sorry. I didn't realize I had applied for the EIDL. I understood that I would be getting this emergency $10,000, and then like 2 months later, I got another deposit, and I was like, "Whoa, oh, okay." I didn't, and I thought I needed to apply for it, and indeed I didn't. And thank goodness that the government came up with that, because that's really my safety net for the next who knows how many months. If this continues and we continue to have issues. I mean, thank goodness, I love those who are brave and went into restaurants, but this is just not the time in my life that I could do a restaurant. I mean, I just don't know how they're managing, because that money goes fast.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Before we go to a commercial, I thought you spent half the EIDL loan on the hat. Never mind.
The hat was a gift. You think okay, no offense to my brother. No offense to all you hog hero loving people out there, but I would not have paid for this hat. I'm a Michigan State kid, not a hog.
So when we come back, we'll ask Tom about the gift taxes you have to pay on such an expensive hat. But first, we want to give a shout out to FeedSpot for ranking us in the top 20 franchise podcasts you must follow in 2020. And Ray, tell us, what number were we ranked at?
1.
We're number one. We're number one. So go check us out on FeedSpot and then watch the show. And now a word from a sponsor.
Hey, franchise owners, how's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvyne, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westvyne.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westvyne with a Y.com.
And we're back. It's an incredibly scintillating discussion on accounting, which, yeah, I know most of the people out there who I've been talking to about this episode said, accounting? What are you, nuts? Do you want to make people stick chopsticks in their eyeballs? So just in case it got too bad, I got a chopstick here. But so far, it's been massively scintillating, especially the hat.
It's 2020. It can't be boring. It's the 1 year. Accounting is not boring.
Okay. I would agree.
Now, I do have to say, so I was reading through the bio, and I know on the show, Ray and I have talked many times about our differences, right? We both have very different style, just kind of from our backgrounds to, the things we like about running our own businesses. And so, Tom, as I was reading through your bio, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly the kind of person I need. Because I am not, and a lot of people out there are not, I'm the idea person, right? I'm the expressive personality. I don't read directions. I hate directions almost as much as I hate doing my bookkeeping. So tell us about some of the services that you provide, because you actually have a plethora of things on your menu.
So before you start, Tom, one thing, you owe me commission if she hires you. You understand that, right?
I think I
did
paid you in
wonder how that would
advance,
work.
Fred. I think I paid you in
Yeah,
advance.
right. No, my accountant's also listening in on this. So yeah, she'll tell you later, but so go ahead. Now answer.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess a quick little story, I bought a small town CPA practice, 18 years ago. And basically when a customer walked through the door, we would determine if we thought there was a possibility they would pay us. And that qualified them to be a customer. And, we did everything for everybody. I mean, I've done some things. I've just done all kinds of stuff that were, quote, things that CPAs do. And, we were looking at how to expand and grow our business a little bit. And specifically, we're setting up a second office. And I asked my CEO forum group, I said, how can we expand in this market? And one of my friends that was in the forum, he was over there on his phone and just, wasn't paying attention at all. I didn't think. And I was actually kind of getting mad at Michael. And then all of a sudden he just like piped up. He was like, who's your target market? And it was like, oh my gosh. And I blurted something out just not to sound stupid, right? And in that whole process, we really assessed who do we want to serve and how do we want to serve them. And we serve franchises and franchisors. We also focus on the independent pharmacy market, which I think operates a lot like a franchise. And it's going through a lot of challenges, not unlike
I did have that note down. Like, where does pharmacy and franchise play together?
Yeah, there actually are some franchises that are pharmacies that are franchised, and a lot of them are branded, like branded buying groups is what I would say, like, different brands, but that's kind of based on who your wholesaler is in the pharmacy industry. But Cardinal Health does have a couple of true franchises, and those are Medicine Shop and Medicap are true franchises for pharmacy. And so anyway, we focused on those two segments. We offer 4 really core products. And the first is Cpas, which stands for Complete Outsourced Monthly Processes and Accounting Service System. Yes, it is a mouthful. The other would be Sharp, which is our simplified HR and payroll solution. We also do audit and attest work. So we audit several franchisors, and not-for-profits are kind of our niche there in that area. And we call it CARE, Comprehensive Audit and Review Engagement Method. And then our final kind of category is what we call Cpas Guide, which is really consulting, but it's, it could be benchmarking, it could be training and education. We have a great relationship with Profit Soup, with Barbara Nuss, and work with her on licensing her product to present part of our education development offering. So those are the four key products: Cpas, Sharp, CARE, and Cpas Guide that we offer.
I love that you use acronyms, because everybody out there in the corporate world has different acronyms. And so the first night is, oh, it's an acronym. So, and Cpas really does sound very interesting. When I went through some of the bullet points, I mean, it really does seem to add a lot of value to people who want to focus on running the operation and working, say, the sales and development of your people. But again, like me, I'm not the numbers person. And so certainly handy to have an organization like yours to help.
Yeah. So, yeah. And, I think the thing with us is we try to use technology as best we can. Sometimes technology is not the answer. We might just say, hey, we'll get a report out of a point of sale system and we'll make the journal entry. Not necessarily what we do a lot. A lot of what we do is integrating systems. So, like, for example, you said you wouldn't want to be in the restaurant industry, but we've got a group of several restaurants, and we pull their download from their POS system every night and push it right out to QuickBooks Online. So their numbers are getting updated every night in their books. We use other technologies like maybe Receipt Bank or Bill.com on the bill pay cycle. We, in our Sharp product, we integrate, our software integrates directly with QuickBooks Online, so payroll gets updated. The idea is that at the end of the month, closing the books is really a formality for us because we've kind of taken care of it throughout the month. And we would like to get our customers into a real good cadence where we're doing something for them daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. And that's really what Cpas is about.
That's awesome. I think that's a great value.
Thank you.
One of the things I'd like to ask you, Tom, is at what point, after you start a franchise, should you have an accountant, a tax accountant? In other words, when I started right away, actually, I hired an accountant immediately, but he only did my taxes at that point at the end of the year. But right now, I have an accountant, and basically, I send her information at the end of every month. So at what point do you think, either in years or at what point when you're making a certain profit, should you have a regular accountant?
Well, we think outsourcing, is a good value to begin with, because really what we do, it would be hard to do internally. Mm-hmm. And the reason it would be hard to do internally is because, you're not an accountant generally as a business owner. You don't really need to manage and train someone internally to do that accounting work and deal with what happens when there's disruption, when you have turnover in that area. And we also think that we manage risk for the owner by having it outsourced. It's like a good friend of mine, Ben Reif, said he used to hire people that he went to church with to be his bookkeeper, and after the third one stole from him, he decided to outsource, and,
Oh my.
And, the thing is that, by developing a good cadence and good, practices and using technologies, it's really from the first day of owning a franchise, I think it should be built into the model. Because it's hard to come back and undo something that was started off incorrectly or not done well. Dealing with someone right now that is in the franchise industry, and they've just had a lot of things that weren't really handled the way they should have been from an accounting standpoint, and it's put them in a bind. And it's actually it's a little bit harder to onboard that person, because now we're having to kind of unravel some things that weren't done quite right. So I think that our solution, I would just say this, we can scale it, even though it's complete, it's a complete outsourced model. We can scale that, and we have a national agreement with a franchisor working with their franchisees. And, someone that's a startup, maybe it consists of us just overlooking, reviewing what they're doing in QuickBooks, and maybe doing a CFO meeting with them once a month and doing the tax work. But we're in tune with what they're doing every month. Even if they're doing their bookkeeping, we're in tune with what they're doing, and being able to counsel them and advise them before the end of the year.
I think that's really important. I mean, we met with my tax advisor again, before we purchased the business, because we were trying to figure out what kind of corporation do we want to be, right? That was a really big decision. And
Yeah.
some of it had to do with financing. Some of it had to do with how we wanted to do our taxes. And, you know, then out of the gate, I used, I'll call it a gal that another franchisee had used, and my chart of accounts were set up all wrong. And so just like this person that you're probably working with now, when you have to go back and change your chart of accounts, that's a lot of work. And so I like the idea that if you were just getting started, I personally would always advise somebody to meet with someone like you, make sure you get off on the right foot. I'm not a QuickBooks expert. My franchisor gave us a quick briefing on how to set up QuickBooks and how to set up my chart of accounts. Again, I'm the big idea person, and for me to sit down for 2 hours with QuickBooks and set up charts of accounts, it just isn't going to happen. And so I think for people who are like that out there, getting an accountant on board and some direction even before you start is really, really important.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I think getting, you know, being able to work with someone that understands franchising is really important as well. And that's why we've really decided to focus on the particular segments that we focus on, because we want to be really good in those segments. And we don't want to have to worry about learning something for only one customer. We want to learn it for multiple, you know, customers where we can leverage our expertise in that area. And as an accountant, it's hard to give up potential business when someone comes to you. And I had a phone call last week. Someone had referred a business to us. And I just asked a couple of questions. And I said, you know, we're just not going to be the right fit. You need to go find someone that already works with your software in your industry and, you know, look at it, and don't worry if they're not in your geography. Because today with things, it's maybe even more important to work with someone that understands the industry and not worry about the geography.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions, because obviously, you know, if you look at Illinois tax law, California tax law, Arkansas tax law, you know, obviously you must have a group of people that are qualified, educated, trained on various different states then that you represent, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it comes down to using really good software, you know, in the back office product for us too. And having software that does address all of the states, and, you know, particularly if you're multi-state, if you're a company that maybe you're on the border and you have operations in both states, in multiple states, that's really, really important.
So looking forward, how do you think trends are going to be changing in 2021 in the accounting field?
Well, there's going to be a lot of changes. It's, as an accountant, I'm a little bit like Kristin. I like to do the things that you talk about, Kristin. I like the marketing side of the business. I like the sales process. I'm probably one of those guys that's maybe like 51% left brain or right brain and 49% left brain. I can kind of move back and forth depending on what I've got to do in the business. But I think the thing that's going to continue to happen is we're going to see bigger firms. We're going to see a lot of regional firms get bigger. We're going to see a lot of smaller firms that really wake up and realize they don't really have a business anymore, because the profession is just changing so fast. Mm-hmm. Technology is such a big part of what we do today in all aspects of our business. Technology, I would say that we're probably 60%, tech enabled, and then 40% accountants in our business model.
How many states do you represent right now? Do you have an idea?
Oh my, someone asked me about, how we were doing, kind of, asking like, how are things going in Fayetteville? And I said, well, they're going good, but our customers are from everywhere. Our customers are from Florida, from South Carolina, Washington, D.C., Boston, Rancho Cucamonga, California. I love saying that.
Yeah.
Fort Collins, Colorado. We've got customers everywhere today. And, we've been on Zoom for several years. And, today, even our phones are Zoom. And, Zoom just makes it where there are no barriers really to where you operate.
That's true. That's true.
So
And
I've known Tom since, I've known Tom since late 2016, if I remember correctly. And he was one of the first people he was one of the reasons that I started using Zoom back in, I think it was January 2017. True?
You probably had a better connection than I have today.
Yeah, I do, but that's always true. So, it is what it is. So at this point, we'll go for another commercial, and then we'll be back with more scintillating accounting talk.
The Franchise Woman is a bi-monthly digital magazine that empowers women as they navigate the franchising industry by providing relevant news, tools, advice, and inspiration. We are a resource for women who are seeking to own their own businesses, improve their existing businesses, find creative solutions, and take advantage of franchise opportunities. We feature women in the business who best exemplify our ideals and have something to teach our readers. In addition to our exclusive articles relating to the female entrepreneur, we also feature brands that are geared for women. Women have become the fastest growing sector in business ownership and have become a powerful, influenceable force fueling the economy. The Franchise Woman will give you the news that is relevant to you to help you navigate the path of successful franchise ownership. By women, for women, and about women. We are the Franchise Woman. Join us today at www.thefranchisewoman.com.
So I will say that Elizabeth did just publish the new issue for November. Check it out. There is an article from a rogue mail, from what I'm told. Not just the normal loan mail, but this month's was actually the rogue mail, from what I'm told. So, Ray, take it away.
Sure. Some of the franchise owners I know who got the EIDL loan have decided to turn it back because they're not using it. I spoke to my accountant regarding that because it's costing us interest every month to have that money sitting in our bank account. My tax advisor says hang on to it. So I'm hanging on to it for a while. And I realized that this is just your personal advice. And what are your feelings about hanging on to the EIDL?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting, the environment that we're in. And, if you think back over the last 10 years or so, maybe since the last downturn, most small businesses haven't carried cash on the balance sheet. Most small businesses have not really built up liquidity. If you're an S Corp and you're profitable, the owners are probably pulling out money, on a regular basis. Same thing for a partnership. And however, if you look at some of the big companies out there, Apple, think about Apple. Apple has more cash on its balance sheet than the United States does, right? And I think that we should take some cues from what they've done with what the larger companies have been doing over this last several years. I really believe that as a small business owner today, you've got to be thinking about, how do I create liquidity? How can I build liquidity? Because I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if this COVID deal is going to get really bad. I don't know if there's going to be something worse than COVID. I don't know if there's going to be some other kind of, disaster in the world that will affect my business. And I think that my advice would be, hang on to the cash. You can always pay it back early later, but you can't pay it back and then say, oh, hey guys, that check I sent to you, I'd kind of like to have it back.
Just kidding.
Yeah. And, the interest rates are so low. I don't even know, Ray, you probably know the interest rate on the EIDL loan.
It's like 1% or something
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing.
Like cheap,
It's-
cheap.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if you amortize that over 30 years, I mean, it's nothing.
Right.
And I would just maintain it, and you can always pay it back a couple years later if you want.
With no prepayment penalty. Like, how do you
Exactly.
do
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's my question then. All right. So I sit on the money and I sit on the money and I use it to buy an island in the Pacific. And then I move to
that?
the
You don't
island
get
in the
that
Pacific.
much.
Well, okay. So we put together 5 or 6, 10 people,
But
something
we
like
don't.
that.
Right.
Well, we put together a group of 10 people. We buy the island in the South Pacific. We all move there. So therefore, we're no longer U.S. citizens. Will they be able to get the money from us if we don't come back to the U.S.?
Are you in the rabbit hole already?
I think
No,
he
no.
did that for
Wait
Kyle.
for the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It's coming.
And, yeah, he's definitely in the rabbit hole. So we have it's not within arm's reach, so I can't grab it, but we have a brick and we have a rabbit, so the rabbit is whenever someone's going down the rabbit hole, we throw it at that person in a meeting. The brick is whenever you're just totally like obstructing any progress in the meeting, we throw the brick at them. So they're stuffed, they're stuffed, they're not a real brick.
Who knew accountants could have so much fun?
We have fun. It's one of our core values.
Yes.
That's
It-
fantastic.
It is one of our core values.
See, and people thought this was going to be a boring show.
So, Fred, I think that just crossed over into a legal question, though. So
All right. We'll get Harold on then. Fine. I just, figured we'd go for it. Anybody interested in the idea of buying an island? Give me a call. I'm not saying we're going to do it. Just give me a call. We'll talk. We could broadcast the pillars of franchising from the island.
Oh, yeah.
And
then
you're
we
gonna
would,
try to write it off.
it would be a business expense, wouldn't it? Corporate headquarters?
Yeah. In Fred's world.
I'm
Yeah.
still
The scary
trying to
thing is
figure
he's not making this up. He's actually thought about this.
I am
So
certain that he has.
So it would be kind of like if we moved the corporate headquarters to like Switzerland. Therefore, the money would be taxed at Swiss rates. So if we move it out of country, then maybe it's Grand
Why don't
Cayman
we just go to
Islands. we're
Grand
going.
Cayman?
I'm going to
That's what
say
I just said.
that
Yeah,
is
the
all.
Caymans. There we
That's
go.
going to be above my pay grade. I'm just going to tell you whenever, I just, it's outside of my level of expertise.
Well, I do
Grand
think
Cayman's
it's important to bring everybody kind of full circle back to, and I think, Ray, you're probably pretty close to being on the same page. I think if you're looking to go in to buy a franchise, you do need to get a tax advisor, accountant involved right away. You need to know what kind of corporations. One of the first things you have to do when you're getting ready to start a business. And I think that there's just a lot of great information that if you wait and you don't educate yourself, it can cost you more in the long run. And you can make some really critical mistakes that you could have prevented if you just get with the right partners and learn as much as you can ahead of time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a blog post that specifically addressed selecting an entity for your franchise. And, the answer as it is in accounting and tax, it always depends. It just really depends on your circumstances. I know that, Kristin, you're an S corporation, you said, sometimes a partnership, if you're going to leverage, if you're going to borrow the money to start a business, a franchise, sometimes maybe doing a partnership is better than an S corporation. And why? Because that debt gets treated as capital, partner capital, versus in an S corporation, it doesn't.
Right. And I think in our situation, my husband was going to continue to work initially anyway, which 14 years later, he still is. And so we had kind of different things going on, and we didn't borrow from a 401k. We had the money that we needed to get it going through other avenues. But Again, I think you're right. It totally depends. Everybody's situation is so different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And it is extremely important to have a tax advisor right from the get-go,
Yeah.
because it's so easy to screw up, and before you know it, you're owing Uncle Sam more money than you ever thought would possibly happen. So it's very important, to go that route, and is just as important with an attorney advising you about the ins and outs of the company you're thinking about going with.
Absolutely.
I'm liking the Grand Cayman idea better and better the more we
Me
do.
too. There's great diving.
There's only one problem: you can't drive the RV there.
Oh, you have to buy a
Hey.
new one.
Yeah.
Ooh, he could put hydrofoils on it. See Ray hydrofoiling across the Lake Michigan and
Scary,
Right.
but I could actually.
Yeah, that's an industry, the RV industry right now. It's a kind of a byproduct of COVID that's just kind of crazy.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
a lot of industries doing really well. Ray, I want to circle back to your question about cash and repaying that EIDL loan.
Okay.
And, so what, if you're already in franchising and you've got cash on the balance sheet, what could you do with that? Well, if you're a good operator, you might look at buying an additional territory, an additional location. Might be a great time to do that and expand and be able to build on that. So it may put some people in a position where they can go out and expand and grow, whereas maybe in this had we not had COVID and the EIDL and the PPP stuff, they might have been limited, but now it kind of gives you some capital to go out and maybe expand if you're in a position to do that. I would say this though. I would say this. You want to be very careful. Just because you have cash and liquidity, don't go out and do some things that are stupid.
No new RV.
I have heard some people doing some crazy stuff with that money.
Yeah. Well,
And I mean,
you're limited, I think, in what you can spend that on. Am I not correct? It has to be, there are certain limitations on the EIDL.
I don't think so, is there?
No?
you're not supposed to buy hats with it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought, but maybe.
Well, the PPP for sure, right? But the EIDL, I did not understand that to be the case.
See,
Yeah,
I
I
thought you
don't
could buy
think that that's
hats
the
with
case.
PPP. Because I was
No.
assuming that hat was like head protection for going into people's houses.
Oh, you mean it's PPE, not PPP, it's PPE. Okay.
Whatever.
All these acronyms.
Too
Yes.
many initials.
So I'm sorry, Tom, but do you understand the EIDL to be only for specific purpose?
And I'm not aware of that understanding. I mean, I think, initially you had to qualify for the EIDL, you had to demonstrate that you had a downturn in the business and meet certain criteria. The PPP was just that you didn't have to necessarily demonstrate it, but, you had to have a need. And basically when the PPP came out, I think every small business owner said, hey, I don't know what's going on. And, I need to go out and get this money.
Right.
Yep.
EIDL is just a little different. You had to demonstrate that you did have a downturn, that you were going to be significantly affected by it in a negative way.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good information. I was under the assumption you had to utilize the loan in a specific manner.
All right, folks, it's everyone's favorite time, going down the rabbit hole. So since we've talked about software a lot today, obviously it must be an artificial intelligence question. So as artificial intelligence gets more and more into the tax software and the accounting software, it will slowly take over. So my question is will the artificial intelligent CPA have a better sense of humor than the human CPAs? If they will, why do you think this is?
Oh, interesting question.
I'm sure it's not directed specifically
don't-
at you.
Yeah, I really don't think that it will be better. I feel like I have a good sense of humor. But, hey, I'm an accountant. I think my own jokes are funny, right?
Especially
Haven't met an
move those
accountant
numbers
yet.
around. We'll just move that decimal. That'll be funny.
He doesn't count sheep. He counts beans.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be some funny attributes to artificial intelligence as they develop that for accounting.
Perhaps not funny, ha ha.
I can see
There's
it.
some amazing things out there, though, happening in technology right now in the accounting field. It's just really, it's really cool. I like it. I'm a geek.
The sense of humor of the artificial intelligence would be like, it would flash across your screen saying, you owe the IRS $10 million. And then it'd say, the next line would say, oh, just kidding.
Yes, right. Or your bank account is deducting and the numbers would count up and up and up, right?
Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be something like, how many accounting bots does it take to, do something?
Screw in
change
a light bulb?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I think we've started a trend here.
None. All of the unemployed accountants do that for you now.
The first AI accountant jokes were born today on this show.
That's funny. It's the thing with artificial intelligence and the way the software and things are developing. It's not letting accounting jobs go away. I will tell you that. We have more of a demand for accountants today, good bookkeepers and accountants than ever before.
Do you have everybody, I'm sorry, there in Arkansas with you? Because we are talking AI and we're talking Zoom for years and all this technology. Do all your people live right there in Arkansas, or do you have them across the states?
That's a great question. When we pre-COVID, about 70% of our team worked probably 70% of the time at home.
Wow.
And as soon as we put our protocol in place, we moved everyone to working at home. Now we're opening up a little bit here and there. Some people are working in the offices, but not much. But our team is kind of geographically
Try that one.
Geographically
I don't know
challenged.
What's the word? Geographically, yeah. Geographically concentrated here. We are going to bring a new team member on that's going to be from Houston. We've talked to several prospects that are outside of our geography, and we're not really limited as to where our employees work these days.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could
All
be a
right,
global
Ray.
employer.
It's a new world.
We'd like to be.
Big deal. We already are, so I don't want to hear about it. Ray, take us out. What's the last question?
Oh, I think everybody's going to be really interested in talking to you, Tom. Anybody who's listening today, I'm sure, has a ton of questions they'd love to ask you. So what is the best way they can get a hold of you to ask those burning questions?
Yeah. The best way probably is to reach out and connect to us through our website, porterfieldcpa.com. And Wade Strubing is our sales coordinator. And Wade is probably the best person to get in contact with for someone that wants to reach out to us.
And yes, Ray, the info's on the website.
Yes.
It's been a strange.
To get everything that Tom said, go to Pillars of Franchising and look it up.
As always, we want to thank Tom for a weird but interesting accounting discussion, and I don't often say that. We'll be back next week with another weird show. Until then, stay safe, be profitable, and do something nice.
Thanks, Tom.
Oh, thank you.
Great guest.
Pillars
Thank you.
of franchising. Pillars, pillars, pillars of franchising.